This week's story is called Lost Things. Wait a minute. Lost Things? Weren't we supposed to be meeting the new king of Israel this week? In our last lesson, we met Samuel. Can you find Samuel? There's Samuel, that's right. There he is. He was a little bit like a pastor and a policeman all in one. He taught the people about God and punished them when he'd done wrong. Now, can you remember who was supposed to be the king of Israel?
God.
That's right. It was God. But what did the people say? Can James remember?
We want a king.
We want a king. That's right.
We
Want a king. We want a king. That's right. They all wanted a king. And God said that he would give them a king. And today we will meet Israel's new king. But first, what's the donkey doing in our story? Is it funny? What's the donkey doing there?
No.
Oh, Kish yelled out the tent door, sorry. The donkeys got out. Go and find them. Yes, Father, Saul yelled back to his dad. Now let me tell you a little bit about Saul. He was huge. The Bible said he was head and shoulders taller than anyone else. In this group, can you find which one's tall? Which one's Saul? Who's tall? That's right. Tall Saul. That's right. He was easy to find because he towers over everyone, kind of like Paw does to us. And Saul was also very handsome. People would look at Saul and say, now that's a man, big and strong, and he looks good. But Saul's dad wanted him to go and find donkeys. Does that sound like much fun? No. But Saul went. He got a servant, packed up some food and clothes, and went looking for the donkeys. He travelled and travelled and travelled through mountains and valleys and cities and lands. Saul couldn't find the donkeys anywhere. He searched for 3 days.
Yeesh.
That's a long time. Finally, Saul said, we had better go home. Dad's going to be worried about us now. Wait, the servant said. I know this city. A prophet lives here. Shouldn't we at least ask the prophet if God will show him where the donkeys are? But we don't have anything to give the prophet. Saul shook his head. He held out his empty bag of food. Even our bread is gone. Can you find the bread? That's it. There it is. Here. The servant held out his hand. I have a little bit of silver. Now it's your turn. Can you find the silver?
There.
That's right. There's the silver. Well, it's flat bread. They used to eat flat bread, not big puffy bread like we do. They used to eat flat bread. Kind of like a taco.
Okay.
Yeah? Or a naan bread.
Yeah.
Remember
What's
naan
a
bread?
naan bread?
Remember naan bread? Used to have it stuffed with cheese. Maybe you don't remember it anymore. It's been a while. But anyway, it's kind of like a taco, but a little bit thicker.
Or that one just
No.
thing like not crunchy.
No, it's like a taco, but it's thicker.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, here we have a little bit of silver. Or a little bit like a couple of coins or pennies. It's not much, but perhaps it'll be enough. Okay, Saul agreed. We'll see if the prophet will accept a little silver. But as they came into the city, it was all a flutter. What was going on? They saw lots of young maidens, that means girls, going to collect water because they didn't have water in their houses back then. They had to go to a well and get water in pots. Now, can you see the pots? Yeah. How are they carrying the pots?
On their head.
On their head. That's right. They used to carry the pots on their heads. And there's some more over there. What's going on? Saul asked a maiden. Oh, we're having a feast today, she said. The prophet's coming to bless it. If the prophet's going to bless the feast, we're never going to get to talk to him. There's the pots. That's right. The servant shook his head. Oh, but you just might, the maiden said, if you hurry and catch him before he goes into the city. If the people see him, he'll be taken to the sacrifices to bless the food or to bless it. But if you catch him first, you might be able to ask him your question. We better hurry, Saul told the servant. Thank you, maiden. Now, do you remember in our last lesson when God whispered in Samuel's ear about the new king? Well, as Saul came up the hill to Samuel, God whispered, that's the man. I was telling you about Samuel. He's the new king. Saul came close to Samuel and asked, do you know where the prophet is? What do you think Samuel would say?
I'm here.
Ah, right here. I'm the prophet, Samuel. Come with me and we'll eat the feast tonight. And tomorrow I will tell you what you want to know.
The him
As-
found the donkey.
It did, that's right. As for your donkeys, don't worry about them. Your
Only
father
found
has already
one.
found them. You did
One.
find them.
They'll always find one.
You already did find one, that's right. Saul's father had already found the donkeys. But you, Saul, you're very important. All of Israel has put their hope on you. Saul, surprised. Me? But I'm from Benjamin. Now remember last week I told you that Benjamin is kind of like a state in Israel. Like Victoria and Queensland are states of Australia. And Tennessee and Virginia are states of America. Saul was surprised he was important because the state of Benjamin was really small. One of the smallest states in all of Israel.
Can you with that?
The tiny red dot, that's right. One at a time, please. It was like the little tiny red dot down there. See, that's New York State. And the red dot is like New York City.
Wow.
The state of Benjamin, or the tribe they call them, the state of Benjamin was about the size of New York City. That's not very big for a state. It's quite small. That's why Saul went, how am I important? My state's really, really small. There we are, we already said that. My family is the smallest family in one of the smallest states of Israel. How am I important? But Samuel took Saul and his servant into the feast and made them sit down in one of the best places of the house. Samuel said to the cook, remember how I gave you some food? I told you to put it aside for a special guest. Give that special food to Saul. So Saul and his servant ate with Samuel. And when they left the feast, Saul and Samuel went to talk on the roof. Now, wait a minute. On the roof? What are you doing up on the roof? Do you know?
No.
Well, our houses, which one looks a bit like our house, James? That's right. We have a pitched roof. You remember? Yeah. They do. They had a flat roof. Our houses have pitched roofs, and we can't really walk up there. But in Israel, they had a flat roof, and they would have stairs or ladders up there, and they could sleep up there, a bit like camping out. That might be fun, as long as you didn't roll off the roof. That would be a bit of a problem, wouldn't it?
Flat. You can't really, well, you can roll, but force yourself at that angle.
Yeah, if you roll over in your sleep, you might roll off the roof. Saul and Samuel woke up early the next morning, and Samuel walked with Saul and his servant for a while. As they got to the end of the city, Samuel said, tell your servant to keep going. I want to tell you what God has said. Samuel took some oil, and he poured it on Saul's head and kissed him. Now that seems a bit weird, doesn't it? When we make a king today, what do we put on their heads?
Crown?
A crown, that's right.
Crown.
Yeah, there's the crown. But when a prophet makes someone king, he would pour oil on their head. Now, which one's the picture of the oil? That's right. That's the picture of the oil. They would put oil on their head and kiss them. It sounds sticky. Well, that's how they did things.
And weird.
And a bit weird, yes. I think they'd think crowns were weird now. Samuel said, God has made you king over Israel. You will know I've spoken the truth when these two things happen. Samuel started to prophesy something was going to happen. He said, when you're passing Rachel's grave, you'll meet, how many men are there? 3. That's right. You'll meet 3 men. One of them will have 3 baby goats.
3 baby goats.
One will have 3 loaves of bread.
And 3 fish babies?
No. And the other one will have a bottle of wine. They're going to say hello to you, and they're going to give you 2 loaves of bread. You're going to take that. After that, you're going to get near the hill of God, and you'll meet a whole group of prophets. They're going to have harps and tambourines and flutes, and you'll become like a different man, Saul, and you'll prophesy. Now, prophesy means to tell what's going to happen in the future. Oh, he's going to start prophesying. That seems pretty cool.
We'll get out of lockdown, hopefully.
Now, I wonder if Saul believed Samuel. He left and headed for home. On his way, he got near Rachel's grave, and guess what happened?
He found him.
He met 3 men. One had, what did he have?
One head.
He had 3 baby goats. And one of them had how many pieces of bread?
1.
1, 2, 3 loaves of bread. And the other one had a bottle of wine. Now, can you remember, what were they supposed to give to Saul?
Again, 2 grey ones, I guess.
The 2 grey loaves of bread. Yeah, I was trying to make them brown, but the computer didn't want to do brown.
I'm not there.
No, you're not there. You went too close. That's why. They gave him 2 loaves of bread. And that's just like what Samuel said. There you are. Well, come up here. I know. You keep moving out of the way of the camera, James. That was true. Would the next part be true too? Saul came to the hill. Can you see the hill, James? Where's the hill? There it is. Saul came to the hill of God, and a whole group of prophets came down to meet them with a harp. Can we find the harp? Where's the harp? Nope, that's not the harp. That's the harp. And that's a tambourine. And I couldn't find a picture of a flute. At least not one that they had back then. They started to prophesy, and even Saul started to tell about the future, just like Samuel said he would. The Bible says that the Spirit of God came over Saul, and he started to prophesy. He was so different that the people who knew Saul all asked each other, "Is this Saul? What happened to him? He's so different."
See, it's on the roof or something.
Yeah, did he fall off the roof?
They hit it.
Yeah. When Saul finished prophesying about the future, he went back home, but he stopped at the hilltop first, where Saul's uncle was worshipping God. His uncle asked, "Where have you been?" Saul said, "I went looking for the donkeys, and when I couldn't find them, I went to ask Samuel." Saul's uncle got excited. "What did Samuel say?" Saul shrugged and said, "Oh, he said that Dad had already found the donkeys, so I came home." Was that all that Samuel said? No. Saul didn't tell his uncle about being made king. Not at all. He kept that to himself. Now, do you remember in our last lesson when all the people wanted a king? And Samuel told them to come back, and he picked one of them to be king of Israel. So all the people came back. "All right," Samuel called everyone to order. "Group together by your state," or your tribe is what they call it in Israel. By your tribe. When the people did that, Samuel said, "Now, I want the tribe of Benjamin right up here front and center." So when all the state of Benjamin got up there, Samuel said, "Okay, now I want the family of Mitri." And all the family came forward, and Samuel said, "Now I want Saul." Wait, where's Saul? Everyone looked around. Where was Saul? "Saul, Saul, Saul," they yelled. And even though Saul was very tall, remember, he was head and shoulders taller than everyone there, they still couldn't find him. Where could he be? And you're just going to have to wait till next week to find out, because Saul is one of our lost things today. Now, let's see. We're going to ask you this one. James, what else was lost today? Do you remember what we lost today? What was lost? What did we lose at the start of our story?
The dart.
What was it?
The dart.
Not the dart, the donkeys.
The donkey.
The donkeys. We lost the donkeys. Now, there was something else we lost today, and it was a bit hard to see. I didn't tell you it was lost. I wonder, we talked about it last week. Can you think, what were we talking about last week and this week that they lost? Bit hard to see.
Faith in God.
That's right, faith in God. Good job. The people of Israel lost their love of God and their respect for him. They didn't want him to be king, and that was sad. Can you see the frowny face? You did get it right. Great job. You did a good job. Now, there's the frowny face. Can you see the frowny face?
Yeah.
Now, we learned some other interesting things today. What did you find that you learned that was interesting? What did you find that was interesting, James? Don't know. What about their roofs? Their flat roofs. You can get up on top of their roof and camp out. That might be a bit fun, wouldn't it? We also learned about prophecy. Now, can anyone remember what prophesying is?
Tell the future and find out if we're getting out of lockdown again.
Yes, if you can tell the future. That would be nice to know when lockdown was going to end. Yes.
Okay.
Prophesying is telling something that will happen in the future. Now, who in our story prophesied? Can we remember?
Samuel.
Samuel and
Saul.
Saul.
I got
Samuel told Saul things that would happen on his way home, and Saul prophesied with the prophets on his way home, just like Samuel prophesied he would. Now, that's a lot of prophecy, isn't it?
I got one mixed up.
I know, it was a lot. Now, James, can you find Saul? Was he big or was he small? He was big. That's right, the big one. Saul was the big one. Now, we're all the way up to our Bible verse. We ready? Can you put that down, please? Jesus saith unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Matthew 22, verse 37. All right, let's use our hands. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Matthew 22, verse 37. Now, next week, you want to... That's not a button, it's a heart. Picture of a heart. Now, next week, we'll find out what happened to Saul and see if he ever gets to be made king. All right, bye for this week.